It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. And I first just like to start off by saying, may the peace and blessings of the owner of all peace and blessings be upon you. You know, in 1989, I was run over by the spike wheels of justice. It was the type of tragic event that nobody should ever have to face. But there I was laid out at 15 years of age with my mother, my sister and brother, and supporters coming to my aid, and systemically I've often said that the fabric of the fiber of the family is being pulled, and it leaves gaping holes. These holes become the indelible scars that we are left with. And here we are 30 years later, showing you the faces of innocence. So what happened to me is not unique. It is actually something that we found happens far too often. Whether that means that there's a rush to judgment because they want to solve a case quickly, or whether that means that they just are practicing what has become known as systemic oppression and systemic racism. We've seen far too often the outcries of Black Lives Matter. And the question is always, well, don't all lives matter when they hear that? But the people who have been paying attention understand that we're not saying all lives don't matter. What we are saying is that there was a time in this country that people of color were looked at as 3/5 of a human being. There was a time in this country that slavery was legal. And then there was a time in this country where they said, we are going to abolish slavery, but then they packaged it in a very nice way as a part of the founding documents of this country with the 13th Amendment. To my surprise, I had no knowledge of the 13th Amendment until I had been in prison for a number of years. I thought it was Ashton Kutcher playing a trick on me. I mean, I'm looking at this document and I'm saying to myself, for the punishment of a crime, they can turn you back into a state of slavery? Now I was understanding what I was looking at. Here I was in the prison industrial complex, and I had been told that I was a political prisoner. But of whose politics? I had been given a number when I entered the adult facility, and that number was 95A 1113. I'll never forget that number. That number is seared into me by the system. This number means that when I turned 21 and they sent me to the adult facility, they gave me the number. I turned 21 in 1995, hence the number 95. I turned 21 in the first part of the year, hence the A in that number. But what's more significant is that on February 27th, I turned 21 in 1995, and I became the 1,113th person to enter the door, and it was just February 27th. Everything that has happened to me, interestingly enough, has happened for me. I often think about Dr. King, and he talks about how when you find what it is that your purpose is in life, do it as if God himself called you to do it at this very moment. Often he's quoted as saying that if it is your purpose in life to be a street sweeper, he wanted all people to be included, so he went to the bottom of what would be considered the working class. And he said, if it is your purpose in life to be a street sweeper, sweep the streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep the streets like Beethoven composed music, like Leoton Price sang before the opera. Sweep the streets as if God himself called you at this very moment to be that, so that no one ever can say there was never a better street sweeper than you. You see, when I was run over by the spike wheels of justice, they never imagined that we would come out shining. It was almost as if the biblical characters, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, were all of us. We have been placed in the fire, and we came out shining without any smoke. I often look at this case that was put upon us, and I think about the inception. I think about Donald Trump taking out the full-page ads in New York City's newspapers, calling for the state to kill us. I think about, had his ad had proper effect, we would have been hanging from trees in Central Park. Had his ad taken proper effect, we wouldn't be here. You see, what you see in this ad isn't just an ad. This ad is a representation of thought. This ad is a captivating document. I'm a graphic designer, so when I've looked at it again, I realized that in big, bold print, they wanted to captivate the viewing audience. Bring back the death penalty is what's written. Bring back our police. There was a sense that being black was a crime. There was a sense that in the 80s, when they had the drug epidemic, they had the opioid epidemic, but in the 80s, it was the war on drugs. And many people that we've known went to prison with football numbers. And now it's the opioid epidemic. And they want to make sure that people who are hurting get the opportunity to get treatment through the Betty Ford clinics of the world. But when I was a youth, it wasn't the same. This ad, which really speaks about the conditions of New York at the time, the fears that the public was experiencing, because they were being told what they were seeing, and sometimes they were experiencing something that they had no idea where its roots lied. This ad was written 2 weeks after we were accused. 2 weeks after they said that we had raped the Central Park jogger, Trisha Mealy. It took another 13 years before the truth to come out. Within that time, we all went through hell. That hell is seen in the film When They See Us by the award-winning filmmaker Ava DuVernay. The whole world got an opportunity to experience what it was to go through the Central Park jogger case, to be known as what we were known back then as the Central Park Five. But then you all saw part 4. And I got to tell you, Ava DuVernay pulled me aside just before we were about to watch it all together. And she said, Yusef, This is the TV version. Part 4 tore us all down. It was in that moment I realized that Corey Wise, who was my friend and still is my friend, he could have lost his life. Corey Wise could have folded under the pressure of one of those many parole board hearings and could have said, this is too much hell. I'm just going to tell him I did it so I can get out of here. But Corey Wise had tenacity. He had stick-to-itiveness. He was a part of a greater purpose where he went in to free me, but he ended up freeing us all. A good friend of mine, Jimmy Gardner, said, thank God I don't look like what I've been through. And when you look at the faces of innocence, oftentimes you see people who are gentle. You see people who have forgiven those who have run over them. You see people who have been trying to push forward. But the crux of the matter is that we are actually trying to also plant seeds in the hearts and in the minds of the people who see us. Because those folks are just like the young lady in California. In 2013, we were showing the film The Central Park Five by the award-winning documentarian Ken Burns. And this young woman, 13 years old, she stands up in the audience and says, I have a question. She says, I'm 13 years old. I want to become a cadet. She said, I'm 13 years old. I am a cadet. I want to become a cop. What advice can you give me? I got to tell you, everything in me was telling her to run, to go to do something else, to not go into that profession. But I realized something. I realized that I was speaking to the future. And this was a unique opportunity. You see, in my travels throughout the United States, on the side of cop cars, I've seen the words, in some variation, to serve and protect. That's a noble idea. And in New York, they go a step above that, and they add the words courtesy, professionalism, and respect. My advice to that young girl, who I hope is a great cop today, is that she do her job. If she can become a person who voluntarily decides that she wants to provide stability, security, protection for the community that she is policing, she'd be one of the best cops out there. If she can provide courtesy, professionalism, and respect, see, we need the spotlight to be shown on good policing so that we can take examples from that. So that when we turn on the news, we won't see another person being killed. We won't see another person being vilified. We won't see another Central Park Five, now known as the Exonerated Five, but I want to call it the Central Park Five just for a moment. Because the word Central Park Five was wrapped around the idea that we had done the crime. We had become the modern-day Scottsboro Boys. This ad that Donald Trump placed in the New York City's newspapers that ran 2 weeks after we were accused, this ad gave a nod to the most sinister side of our society. And it gave a key to the door being opened by people like Pat Buchanan. Pat Buchanan writes in the papers that we should take the eldest one of them, Corey Wise, and hang him from a tree in Central Park. We should take the others and horsewhip them. maybe this will make the city's parks safe again. And he said that we should do this by June 1st. This was a false accusation. They knew that we hadn't done it. Everything that they were using against us pointed to the fact that we had not done this crime. There was no DNA evidence that matched us, but there was DNA in this case. And 13 years later, that truth came out, and the real perpetrator was found. He was already in prison. But because they got stuck with the lie that we had done this, while we were going to trial, he was out committing more crime. I remember him talking about it. And he said that one of his last victims was a young, pregnant Latina woman. He said that he came into her home and brandished a knife. She asked him, she pleaded with him, "Would you let me put my children in the next room?" He allowed her to do so. And then when she came back, he raped her, stabbed her to death, killing her and her unborn child. Had the system got it right, that young lady would be alive today. Her husband would have been able to appreciate his wife, their child, and the rest of their children. But here we are, 31 years later in my case. We're still calling out for justice. We're still calling out for change. We want the whole system to be corrected so that we can walk into the future of the dream that Dr. King so eloquently said, where we become the kaleidoscope of the human family. But we're here to change that. We're here to ask people, we're here to ask everyone to support the work of what's being done here so that nobody goes to prison for a crime that they didn't commit. And more importantly, if you happen to have done a crime, that you get a fairer justice through things like the sentencing project, that things happen in a way that gives you life as opposed to give you death. There was a time where it was called the correctional facility. People knew that if they committed a crime, they had an opportunity to go to a place to pay their debt to society and to return productive citizens. We are now the #1 country that locks up people and throws away the key. We got to do better. We got to be better. And so, what I want to share with you as I close is a poem from my book. This is actually my signature piece. It's called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." The revolution will not be televised. I can remember when that statement made me sad inside. Too young to be in it. Now I couldn't even see it. Why? Why couldn't the revolution be televised? The last poets, Gil Scott-Heron. As I grew up, I began to see. They left theirs, and I too wanted to leave a mark on history. A man in half, and I wanted to bask in that task that set men free. But a revolution, the revolution, is where I knew I had to be. The revolution will not be televised. They didn't want to display the victory of those quote unquote lesser men. The revolution will not be televised. Smile. I know, because I am the revolution. Thank you.